I know my love was different from yours, but it was love too. At face value, Alien Stage is a dystopian story about how aliens have taken over Earth and forced humans to sink for their lives. The narrative is told through a series of music videos and competitive rounds, where survival depends on the approval of an audience. But what makes Alien Stage so popular and special is not just the music or the futuristic setting, it's the way the series uses the relationships between the main cast to portray love, loss, and connection. The fandom for Alien Stage mainly consists of an LGBTQ+ audience, and it's easy to see why. Of course, there are popular pairings like Mizi and Sua, or Ivan and Till, but the deeper reason is that the series resonates with themes of identity, repression, and longing. It tells stories of love that exists in environments where it isn't supposed to, and of bonds that push against systems designed to break them. With that said, in this video I want to dig deeper into the true meaning behind Alien Stage and explore the hidden metaphors deep within it. To me, personally, one of the most fascinating aspects isn't just the pairings, but the way each character is portrayed and shaped to feel relatable, vulnerable, and therefore deeply loved by the audience. Through characters like Mizi and Ivan, Alien Stage perfectly encapsulates the feeling of what it's like to be homosexual in a society that is overwhelmingly heteronormative. Their stories reflect the constant weight of stigma and the pressure to meet expectations of what people are supposed to be. This series captures the painful idea that being gay, or simply being different, is viewed by society as imperfect, something that must be hidden, repressed, or judged. So let's really get into it, and focus how Ivan and Mizi show queerness and internalized homophobia, and how it shapes their stories and influences their actions, making them both unreliable narrators in the world of Alien Stage. The aliens treat humans as performers, pets, and property, not as equal beings with complex inner lives. Under this system, human emotions, including love, are commodified as part of a performance, not recognized as legitimate personal experiences. Because of this, sexual orientation isn't part of the cultural vocabulary. There is no straight, gay, or bi. Attraction exists, but without social recognition or affirmation. As already stated, the aliens treat humans' love and connection as entertainment. For example, when Sua dies, the aliens not only cheer grotesquely with bodily fluids because of the death, but also Mizi's reaction, as even though they don't and never will understand the concept of human love and connection, they still feed off the despair of humans who lose their loved ones. However, the aliens have a heteronormative view. As explained, they can't understand love, but know through discoveries about the scientific side of humans about childbirth and what is considered to be normal. Firstly, we know from the True Face comic that in the garden some children are taught to believe that human instinct is for a man and a woman to be together and fall in love. A male and a female are bound to fall in love and end up mating, pushing the idea that two humans' worth, especially the woman's, is childbirth, and not for who they actually are, which mirrors modern ideas against homosexuality. At first glance, Mizi and Ivan seem strikingly similar. Both of them wear carefully constructed masks that shape how others perceive them, both struggle with feelings they can't fully express, and both are considered unreliable narrators in their own stories. The facades protect them, but also distance them from the people around them, making it easy to think they're playing the same game of deception. But when we look closer, the reasons behind their masks and the way they cope with the world couldn't be more different. Let's start with Mizi. The facade people accuse her of isn't there to trick others. She doesn't pretend to be someone she's not, and she doesn't act out of character. What she does is something different. She tricks herself. What we're looking at is a textbook case of toxic positivity, a coping mechanism where someone denies or oppresses painful realities in order to protect their own mental stability. Mizi grew up in Shine's protective bubble, shielded from the system's cruelty. We don't know exactly how much she knew before Annette Garden, but it's safe to assume not so much. So when she's suddenly thrown into this brutal new reality, her brain clings to the one strategy it knows: hold on to the ignorance she was raised in. She closes her eyes to the horrors, not to deceive others, but to protect herself from breaking down. Obviously, we know from the comics that Mizi knew that people died, but we really don't know the extent that she knew about Alien Stage before arriving in Annette Garden. And yet, pretending not to see doesn't mean she's blind. Deep down, Mizi knows. She feels the fear, the guilt, the grief. But acknowledging those feelings would mean facing the causes, the deaths, the cruelty, the weight of survival. So she smiles, buries it all, She gaslights herself into believing the world is still the safe place she once thought it was. Mizi isn't faking, she's surviving. But I think it's also important to note her gradual downfall, which we will talk about more when we look deeply into her character. But for now, let's look at Ivan. Unlike Mizi, Ivan never had the luxury of a protective bubble. No guardian, no safe home, just hunger and loneliness. From the start, his survival depended on staying alert, scanning the world for danger. And the one time he let his guard down, when he accepted bread from Isaac, he was captured. That moment of comfort became a lifelong reminder: pleasure is dangerous. So Ivan grows up hyper-aware of the world's cruelty. He notices the cameras in the flowers, he figures out how to remove collars, he also knows that losing on stage equals death. But he also knows hunger, fear, and isolation. The slums taught him everything firsthand. At least in the system he's fed, at least he's there. He can predict now he'll die. Ivan adapts. He builds his Prince Charming persona, excels at school, becomes the perfect pet. His mask is meant to deceive others, but it's not out of malice. It's a survival tactic. He copies behaviors, plays by rules, and hides his raw, underdeveloped emotions. His facade protects him from a world he can never truly trust. So when we compare them, Ivan and Mizi both wear masks, both put up walls, and both sometimes trick the people around them. But their stories are fundamentally different. Ivan runs from the past. Mizi clings to hers. Ivan adapts to survive. Mizi freezes to protect herself. Ivan sees the world clearly, but hides it behind a performance. Mizi looks away from the cracks in her world, pretending she's still safe. Until the end, where, Neither of them are fake. They're just coping, each in their own way, shaped by the lives they were forced to endure. And that's the beauty of Alien Stage. Two characters, both scarred by trauma, both unreliable in their own ways, but reflecting two opposite responses to survival. Together, they show us how the same system can break people in vastly different ways. Now we're going to look deeper into Ivan's character, his love for Till, and how his childhood shaped how he was today, and we're going to take in the main themes of today: queerness and homophobia. To really understand Ivan first, we need to talk about a stereotype that has haunted queer people for generations: the predator stereotype. This stereotype suggests that queer people, especially gay men and trans women, are inherently dangerous, inherently deceptive, always a threat to normal society. It's a stereotype behind the gay panic defense in American courts, where homophobic violence is excused as an instinctive response to discovering someone's sexuality. It's the same logic used today when conservatives call queer people groomers for something as harmless as reading children's books in drag. The roots of this idea stretch back to at least as far as World War II, if not even earlier. Even the word queer reflects it, originally meaning odd or strange. It was turned into a slur that marked queer people as abnormal, broken, or dangerous. And media has consistently reinforced this image. Queer-coded villains are everywhere, sleek, unsettling, their sexuality made into a symbol of depravity. There's even a trope named for it on the TV tropes, the depraved homosexual. This cultural weight matters because Ivan takes those same narratives and applies them to himself. He doesn't just feel unworthy of love, he feels like a predator for having those feelings at all. His sexuality directly clashes with his upbringing in an inapt garden and what he has learned of love from the things around him. Ivan is a character who has accepted his place in this system that dictates his life, with his primary goal having been survival for many years. To attain this survival, he has learned to observe the things around him, such as people and relationships, to the fullest in an attempt to get a taste of what he lacks himself. Even though Ivan is generally intelligent, he relies on the teachings in an act garden to learn about love, studies, and how to adapt effectively. The aliens don't teach children love. They teach them that a male and a female pet will inevitably end up mating together, and that's the natural instinct. This was Ivan's first impression of a kind of love, something that he realized he didn't feel anything for, because Ivan felt that attraction that was supposed to be between a man and a woman with another man, and therefore he instinctively covered up his love as something unusual, as he never describes his love as tender, but instead dark and twisted. For example, in Paradise, when he realizes his love, he says he banged his fangs for the first time. In his last words, he calls Till his victim. he labels his own feelings as shallow. Ivan didn't deny that he loved Till in such a way, but instead perceived his love as something twisted and forceful. Till becomes the focus of his distortion. Ivan doesn't admire him because they are similar. He admires him because Till is everything Ivan believes he isn't. Strong-willed, disobedient, unafraid. His belief that his love is twisted is partially because of the only depiction of gay attraction he ever got outside of his feelings was the male signaling that were forceful with the ones he loves. Till. Going back to what I said about Ivan learning from his observations of the world, he started to associate his feelings for Till, same-sex attraction, with the only representation he got of it against Till, which was violent and traumatic. This only spurs Ivan to push Till away more when he gets perfectly normal feelings that a boy his age with a crush would normally have, because he saw it as unnatural and harmful. Especially since Till was in love with a girl, and thus solidified Ivan's perception that his feelings were invasive. In the end, he chose love over his inner conflict despite seeing it shallow. Another reference point comes from Mizi and Sua. From the outside, it looks like the ideal, innocent, righteous, reciprocal. To Ivan, their bond seems to embody everything he lacks. But of course we know the truth. Mizi and Sua's love was complicated, sometimes toxic, marked by violence, sacrifice, and secrecy. Ivan can't see that. He only sees the surface, a love that is validated because it is mutual. That's why Ivan feels betrayed when he realizes Sua's love isn't like his own. Her love is real because it's returned. His, by contrast, is unreturned, and therefore, in his mind, twisted. This divide between reciprocal love and one-sided desire cements Ivan's belief that what he feels is fundamentally wrong. It is also important to note that it is Ivan himself who refers to Sua as having a twisted personality. Sua is a girl who likes girls, and Ivan is a boy who likes boys. Even without this, we know that the world of Alien Sage was heteronormative. Symbolically, Ivan's story matches that of someone with internalized homophobia. All of Ivan's self-perceptions align with homophobic ideas that society teaches us, that gay people are predators, that their feelings are inherently wrong. This stereotype is directed at queer people as a whole, but it especially targets gay men and trans women, who are frequently depicted as tricking straight people into sex or intimacy. So yes, Ivan consistently describes himself as predatory and frames his desires as wrong. But should we accept his words at face value? Not necessarily. Doing so risks enforcing the stereotype, giving it a kind of truth it doesn't deserve. And when we actually look at his actions, there's very little evidence to support his self-hatred. The gap between what Ivan thinks about himself and what he actually does is significant. What matters most, I'd argue, is not the intrusive, shame-filled thoughts he carries, but the choices he makes. Beyond his youth, we rarely see Ivan behave cruelly towards Till. He doesn't push him past his limits, and he doesn't force intimacy onto him as an adult. In fact, between graduation and round 6, some interpret that the two barely spoke at all, especially given that Ivan's graduation message carries a tone of finality, almost like a goodbye. When we were young, we were both ignorant and often bickering. But come to think of it, now that when we're getting older, I feel that maybe we could have been friends. Saying goodbye like this, I can feel the time indeed fly too quickly. If I knew sooner, I would get close to you. Only then I didn't have to regret this much. I hope you will remember me. Ivan hiding and returning Till's pencils is another good example of how his intentions often misunderstood. He didn't do it to upset Till or exert control. It was a clumsy but genuine attempt to make Till happy, to create a connection between them. Even Till eventually comes to understand this. Despite everything he endured, being traumatized, forcibly kissed, and even choked, he realizes that Ivan's feelings weren't abnormal or violent at their core. They weren't rooted in cruelty or sadism. They were desperate attempts at affection for someone who didn't know how to express love in a healthy way. This is the most striking in the moment where Ivan leans in to kiss Till when he's asleep, and something that should never happen in reality. But within the story, the scene functions differently. It uses a familiar narrative device, a way of showing the audience that a character has accepted their own feelings, but is too afraid to express them openly. It isn't meant to glorify the act, but to highlight Ivan's repression, his fear, and his inability to love in any way that feels safe or normal. Once Ivan realizes that he loves Till, his first instinct is to help him escape. It's important to highlight what the beloved meteor scene represents. In this moment, Ivan shows genuine kindness. Till's greatest wish is to be free, and Ivan risks everything to give that to him. Yes, there's also a selfish layer, the fantasy of saving Till, of being the one person Till depends on, and of living together in isolation. But that doesn't cancel out the kindness, it simply makes it nuanced. And when Till cannot bring himself to leave, because of Mizi and his own fear, Ivan turns around with him. He stays. From then on, he has every opportunity to escape on its own, but he never takes it. He refuses to leave without Till, the only person who ever gave his life meaning. Ivan even admits that Till is as much a part of the Paradise as he is. Their classmates saw them as a duo. Despite all of Ivan's self-loathing, Till was important to him, and it was evident that he was also important to Till. Now, let's look more closely at Ivan's behaviour. We don't see much of him hitting or stealing from Till past a certain age. Why? Because Ivan learns not to act on his impulses. Yes, he has violent thoughts. He talks about wanting to dig into Till's wounds. Yes, he does strange things like licking Till's blood, but these actions don't seem to shake Till as much as we expect. Till knows Ivan steals from him. Till sees Ivan lick his blood because Ivan does it right in front of him. Till has been beaten by Ivan, and despite all of this, Till doesn't walk away. He spends time with him. On some unconscious level, Till must have understood that Ivan's actions weren't really about cruelty, but they were cries for attention. And Till is not the type to tolerate genuine abuse. His whole character is defined by fighting against his abuser even when it costs him. So the fact that he stays near Ivan tells us something important. Ivan's behaviour, however strange, wasn't truly harmful enough to drive Till away. As a child, Ivan acted violently, impulsively, and even obsessively. But as he grew, and as he became capable of doing serious harm, he stopped. That shift is crucial. Now, moving on to the Nuzzling scene. At this point, Till has just been assaulted and drugged by the aliens. Ivan is poised to act on his most violent, selfish desires. He's about to affirm what he already fears, that he is just like the aliens, ready to kiss an unconscious, vulnerable Till. And then, he doesn't. Instead, Ivan nuzzles him, gently and innocently, like a child seeking comfort. This moment is so important because it proves that Ivan is not the monster he thinks he is. When presented with the quote-unquote perfect opportunity to take advantage of Till at his most vulnerable, he doesn't. And he can't. At his core, his love isn't predatory or sadistic, it's confused, desperate, and childish. The scene deliberately sets itself up as though Ivan will follow the predatory kiss trope, only to subvert it. It shows that Ivan's opinion of himself is wrong. He thinks he's corrupt and monstrous, but when it actually comes down to it, he will not disrespect Till's autonomy. What he truly wants is for Till to be okay. This is why I find portrayals of Ivan as a manipulative predator so unconvincing. The text gives us a clear counterexample, a moment that shows exactly what Ivan won't do. Of course there's the elephant in the room, round 6, when Ivan forcibly kisses Till. I won't deny it, it happens, but context matters. First, the creators of Alien Stage stated on Patreon that enact children don't fully understand what kissing is. For them, it doesn't carry the same weight of sexuality that we, the audience, project onto it. When Till reacts with disgust, it isn't Ivan's feelings, it's the act of kissing itself which he finds gross. Second, the kiss is not about Ivan taking advantage of Till, it's about desperation, finality, and death. Ivan kisses Till at the exact moment he's about to die. It's framed as an act of suicide, his way of sealing his fate. The kiss damns him, and he knows it. That doesn't make it okay, but narratively, it doesn't contradict the nuzzling scene. The takeaway is that Ivan won't act when Till is unconscious or unable to resist, but when Ivan himself is seconds away from death, when he knows there's no future, he finally does the one thing he's always longed to do. It's less about Till's vulnerability and more about Ivan's own self-discretion. If you want to know more about particularly Ivan's sacrifice in the kiss and what it means, as well as the whole entire other casts to love and their relationships, I have another video essay titled The Love and Alien Stage, which you should go and watch if you feel interested. But back to this. There's a cruel irony here. More than anything, Ivan wanted to be remembered by Till, and he is, but not in the way he hoped. Vivime mentioned in a Q&A that if Ivan knew how Till hallucinated him, he'd be happy to know he was remembered, but devastated by the form that memory took. Because the truth is, Ivan never wanted to hurt Till. Not really. His love wasn't healthy and it wasn't safe, but it wasn't sadistic either. He could manipulate, he could lash out, but he wouldn't take away Till's autonomy for his own gratification. The only times he overstepped were either in childish confusion or in desperate acts meant to save Till. And that is the paradox of Ivan's love. Obsessive, clumsy, destructive at times, but at its root, kind-hearted and genuine. It lashes out because it doesn't know what else to do. But when it truly matters, when Till is most vulnerable, Ivan chooses care over cruelty. 2 out of 3 of Ivan's solo song art shows him as a vulnerable, small, fragile child. His childhood is a fundamental part of his story, yet is often overlooked beyond his constant struggle to survive. No character in Alien State truly reaches adulthood. Luca, for example, is the oldest by age, yet emotionally the most fragile and immature. Every character's autonomy is limited, sometimes down to their most basic needs. The glimpses we get into their childhoods aren't just a backstory, they show how formative experiences shaped their personalities and behaviours. This is essentially true for Ivan. Fans often split his story into pre-meteor shower and post-meteor shower phases because of the changes in his behaviour, but it's important to remember that it's the same boy throughout. The child who never felt like he belonged, who was scared, who craved comfort, understanding, and a sense of belonging. The truth is that he never really healed. What shifts after the meteor shower isn't a new Ivan, but a response from the same little child. The mask he wears, the way he shields himself from rejection, all comes from that core vulnerability. Remember Everything emphasizes this beautifully. Till, having lived an autonomous life for 7 years and grown in maturity, looks back at 22-year-old Ivan and sees how young he truly was, how much fear, uncertainty, and longing it carried. Scars and Remember Everything brings us into the heart of Ivan and Till's complicated bond. Scars is Till's survivor's guilt, the festering wound left by the loss of the ones he loved. Remember Everything is his realization, his acceptance, and ultimately his healing. Through these comics, Ivan's story finally receives its closure, and so does their relationships. At its core, the point of Ivan Till is simple. Ivan loved Till, but Till never had enough time to love Ivan back. Quickly, also, the theme of queerness and homophobia can be linked to the character of Till, which I will expand on deeper comparing him to Mizi. This alien-controlled world renders Till's bisexuality unlabeled, not by choice, but by circumstance. There is simply no framework for him to express or define his sexuality. Human attraction is not acknowledged as meaningful, and love exists without cultural language or validation. However, within the rebellion, Till begins to find a more welcoming space, where affection and connection are openly expressed. Surrounded by examples of love in many forms, he slowly adapts and learns how to articulate his own feelings, gaining the tools and confidence to express them, as described in my previous video. The comics centre on Till's emotional journey and healing process following Ivan's death. It delves into how Till remembers and reconnects with Ivan's memory, which ultimately helps him regain his voice emotionally. Till will never know the true extent of Ivan's love, yet with time, he begins to understand and remember that both of them were deeply wounded and unable to see it at the time. In a moment of reflection, Till tells Ivan that he never asked if he was okay, only to realise that he himself never asked Ivan either. Confronting Ivan's ghost forces Till to face both his own feelings and the reality of Ivan's absence. His tears convey the painful understanding that he will never have the chance to fully know him. The eventual disappearance of Ivan, I say Ivan like that because as we know, and as described in my previous video, this Ivan isn't Ivan. It's what Till sees of Ivan following the circumstances of round 6. So the eventual disappearance of Ivan symbolises that Till has remembered everything, regaining his voice and carrying forward the intertwined grief and love he holds for him. This contrasts Isaac's earlier words in the comic, "You need to learn how to forget, Till." Isaac represents a perspective that suggests healing comes through forgetting, letting go of painful memories to move on. This contrasts sharply with Till's journey, which centers on remembering and integrating past trauma and love rather than erasing it. The line highlights a fundamental tension in how people cope with loss, whether to suppress memories or face them honestly. With this, he sets to find Mizi, seeking to share pain with someone he relates to, while also recognizing that his earlier love for her was in fact childish. Calling the Act Garden his family demonstrates the bond they share. Even if Till never had time to fully comprehend his romantic love for Ivan, he has faced his trauma and wishes their connection could be described as something between friendship and romance. The ending for Ivan and Till is bittersweet, realistic, and open-ended, leaving room for both lingering questions and quiet hope, as Till is in the rebellion now, and he will continue Mizi and Ivan's legacy, saving the children. Now, Till and the rebellion, having learned Ivan's feelings and learned how to love, will now continue on the legacy of everyone in the Act Garden, including Huna, Mizi, Sua, Ivan, and everyone he loved. The reason why he's saving these kids and smiling at the child that looks like Mizi and Ivan isn't just because they remind him of his past. It's because he doesn't want them to suffer the same fate that he himself went through. Him saving the kids makes them able to learn how to love. And that is fundamentally what Till represents. Now, let's talk about Mizi. With Mizi, she was constantly objectified by men around her who felt as if they were entitled to her affection because she was an openly kind girl to everyone. And when she rightfully rejected someone in Act Garden, she would get brutally ridiculed for it. This is part of the reason why Mizi feels so safe with Sua. She finds safety in the idea that she could break her easily, which is the opposite of what she felt like when men were violent with her both verbally and physically. Mizi has a complex in which she constantly blames herself for rejecting these boys. She thinks that she has manipulated them or led them on because of the influence that her kind nature seems to have on them. She is identified by her beauty, which she has been showed to have no say in despite how comfortable she is. However, Mizi is very open with her affection for Sua. Even when she knows that a boy loves her, she will bring Sua up whenever she gets the opportunity to do so. She voices that she will never love anyone more than Sua, openly, which shows that it's not Mizi that thinks her love is wrong. It's that she can't understand why everyone else seems to think that it's wrong, and ends up confused and frightened by that kind perception of her love without Sua by her side to reassure her. That influence of society upon the love she has lived her life by makes Mizi feel insecure about her safety and acceptance. But she is confident in the fact that Sua is the right one for her. In Ruler of My Heart, the initial idea for an arranged marriage setting was very purposeful, as it is Mizi's worst nightmare. Getting married to a man who she has no interest in, with her autonomy stripped away and without Sua there to remind her of her presence through the terrific perception of the adoration she holds so dear to her chest. Mizi has always loved women, and she has also loved Sua. Also, Mizi being a lesbian is so important and adds to her whole thing of being unknown, which is what her name means in Korean, her constantly having to pretend to be things she isn't, and when it comes to sexuality, which is fixed in alien stage, she brings to society something that hasn't been seen before: homosexuality. Mizi's actions are often misread as manipulation, are better understood as coping mechanisms shaped by intense survivor's guilt and self-loathing. Throughout the story, she faces constant accusations of being cunning or manipulative, which gradually becomes internalized beliefs. This self-villainization comes from the trauma of losing everyone she cared about, losses she feels responsible for even when she objectively may not be. Her tendency to wear facades isn't calculated or malicious, it's a survival strategy. She's horrified, confused, and desperate to protect herself emotionally. Her relationships, especially with Sua, are sincere, and the grief and guilt she carries shows how deeply she cares. It's striking how Luca's manipulative actions are often framed as necessary for survival, while Mizi's similar behaviors are weaponized to paint her as a villain. Luca acts intentionally and strategically, whereas Mizi's manipulation is largely unconscious, born from trauma and an inability to control how others perceive her. Both survive under extreme circumstances, but the motivations behind their actions differ. Many critiques of Mizi overlook the social and psychological context of the series. Alien Stage doesn't erase social norms like gender roles or heteronormativity. Instead, it shows how they persist, creating toxic pressures for all characters. Reducing Mizi to a villain misses the nuanced portrayal of a trauma-affected survivor navigating impossible circumstances. While Sua's death occurs within situations Mizi is involved in, she neither intended or knowingly caused it. Most deaths stem from individual choices, grief, or circumstances beyond her control. Mizi's intense self-blame is an extreme form of survivor's guilt, not an accurate measure of her responsibility. Mizi's identity is shaped by survival. She believes her actions are acts of manipulation, but the tragedy is that she's internalized others' accusations. The pressures of being objectified, misunderstood, and constantly reduced to an image warp her perception of herself. She questions whether her feelings were ever really genuine, yet her actions, risking herself for Till, caring for others, show raw desperation, grief, and love, not malice. Now, bringing it back to the main topic, the Enact Garden children are raised with heteronormative misogynistic ideals. Even in an alien-controlled society, sexism and queerphobia exist, and persist. Mizi's smiles and perceived charm are misread as flirtation or entitlement, mirroring real-world pressures on queer women. These social pressures benefit the aliens, create control disguised as culture. Mizi is a deeply complex, trauma-affected survivor. Her so-called cunning is a misinterpretation of her struggle to survive and care for others. Alien Stage invites audiences to see her as a human, flawed, grief-stricken, but ultimately sincere and empathetic. Her story underscores the persistence of misogyny and homophobia, even in extreme circumstances, making her experiences both personal and socially resonant. Finally, I wanted to pay attention to the character of Till, now comparing him to Mizi in the way they are affected by their blatant heteronormativity. We've already discussed briefly on how this affects Mizi, but how does it compare to Till? While there's no concrete notion of heterosexuality in the Alien Stage world, there's a rigid framework of mating dictated by the aliens. By reducing mothers to providers and children to creations, the aliens strip relationships of their emotional core, turning them into functional transactions. For Mizi, who can only ever truly love Sua, being told that men and women can't just be friends, and that intimacy exists only between male and female, it left her deeply unsettled. When a boy lashes out at her for rejecting his advances, it terrifies her. She instinctively apologizes, not because she believes she's wrong, but because she's made to feel like her very feelings are deviant. This is where her self-hatred begins to take root. She starts to believe that she must be this manipulative temptress others accuse her of being, even though her sweetness and affection were never meant as invitations for a romantic attachment or love. Till, on the other hand, represents a very different side to this distorted framework. Despite the blushes, the sketches, and the songs he dedicates to Mizi, when asked why he likes her, his only answer is that she's pretty. A Patreon memo from the Venus expands on this. Till sees Mizi as the sole beautiful person among ugly aliens and annoying humans, deciding it must be his destiny to protect this goddess. His feelings are less about Mizi as a person, and more about the brightness she represents in his otherwise bleak world under Iraq's ownership. Much like Mizi, Till was once a tender and naive child, protected by his provider Io. The way Io's love sheltered him mirrors the way Sua created a paradise for Mizi. For Till, Mizi and Sua's shared warmth likely reminded him of the love he lost, but lacking the language or understanding to define that feeling, he mislabeled it as romantic love. This is why so much of Till's affection feels superficial. He isn't malicious, but he doesn't really see Mizi beyond the pedestal he's placed her on. Ironically, this only deepens his self-loathing. She comes to believe that her closest friendships are reduced to attraction, that her only worth lies in the naive sweetness others project onto her. The Venus has even played with this dynamic in comedic sketches, Till trying to carry Mizi but being carried instead, or Mizi literally wearing the pants while Till wears a dress. their inability to get heterosexuality right isn't just comic relief, it's commentary. Mizi is a lesbian, and Till doesn't actually understand what he feels for her. Their romance is a poor imitation of something that they were taught but never truly grasped. The brilliance of the new comic lies in how it frames this misunderstanding. It's not just about condemning Till, nor about villainizing Mizi, but about showing how harmful it is to grow up queer in a heteronormative world. For lesbians like Mizi, this often means internalizing blame, for rejecting men for being too nice, for simply existing in ways that don't fit the script. And for boys like Till, it shows how even genuine feelings of admiration or longing can be warped into shallow, confused imitations of love when all you've been given is a broken template to follow. So, in short, Alien Stage isn't just a story about survival under alien control, it's a mirror of how queer people navigate a world that constantly tries to erase or distort their love. Through Ivan's repression, Mizi's survivor's guilt, and the weight of heteronormative pressing on every character, we see a reflection of our own society's prejudices and the quiet resilience it takes to live authentically. What makes these characters unforgettable is not just that they're flawless, but that they are human. Scarred, longing, and searching for connection in a system built to deny them. Their love may be messy, imperfect, even misunderstood, but it is still love, and in itself, resistance. So, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more video essays about Alien Stage and other media, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment what animes you would like to see talked about next, or any other video ideas you'd like to see. Your support helps us keep making deep dives like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, it was love too.